Just to start off, Jock, were you always destined for a career in music growing up?
I think so, yeah. I started playing guitar when I was 8 years old, and by the time I was 12 or 13 and getting really good, a lot of my friends, that's when the Beatles came out, and a lot of my friends a few years later when I was a freshman in high school or a sophomore in high school were saying, wow, it'd be really cool to be in a band, and I was already pretty good and had played 6 or 7 years. So, yeah, I think I was destined to be a guitar player, and I knew that was the best thing I did for a long time.
Tell us about the musical path that led you to forming Firefall. You had a great apprenticeship working with Graham Parsons, I believe.
I did. An amazing, I think it was only about 2 months. It was his last major tour after his first album, which was Grievous Angel. And, oh no, I take that back. His first album was GP. I played in the tour for GP. He went back to California, made Grievous Angel, and then had his tragic death out in Joshua Tree shortly after that. I met Rick Roberts, who replaced Graham Parsons in the Flying Breeder Brothers. Rick and I met in New York City when Graham and Emmylou and I were playing there. And he said, oh, you're in Boulder too? Great, we'll have to get together. And it kind of just started from Rick Roberts and I both realizing that we lived in Boulder, Colorado.
Getting on to when you formed Firefall, was there a recipe for the sound that you wanted with that band, or did that take time to develop?
Actually, it did not take any time to develop. We didn't know what recipe we were striving for, but the best thing that happened to Firefall is that we formed the band around two really prolific and really good songwriters, Rick Roberts and Larry Burnett. And on our first day of rehearsal, the band had 20 or 30 original songs to choose from. And I think that we were very fortunate in the fact that when the people in the band played those songs, they sounded like a band and they sounded a certain way. And it was just pretty much the combination of, some really great players like Mark Andes on bass, myself on guitar, David Muse on sax, flute, and keyboards, mixed in with these wonderful songs and wonderful vocals of Rick and Larry's. And we didn't try to sound like anything. We just kind of, from the first few days of rehearsal, sounded like that. And I know how many bands struggle with, well, what are we going to sound like? What genre are we going to be in? What are we going to do here? What are we going to do there? Firefall never had that problem. We kind of just sounded like we did, and we all liked it a lot from the start and thought, wow, we have something here that might go.
Mm-hmm. Now, the band came in at a time when rock and roll was becoming, I guess you could say, corporatized. Stadium rock was coming into vogue, and you toured with a lot of bands of that nature. Was it hard not to get swept away by the glamour of all that and stay focused on music?
Yeah. And we were really fortunate that our first album, when it came out, now first of all, I think it's a really strong album, has really good songs and good performances, and it was perfect timing, which a lot of times you can't control the timing of, what happens, but everything was very synced in, and it was a perfect time to come out. And all of a sudden we were touring with the Doobie Brothers or Fleetwood Mac or the band, and of course Fleetwood Mac in the White Album soon thereafter led to the Rumors tour, and we're opening for the Rumors tour of Fleetwood Mac and playing in front of 80 to 100,000 people a day, and it was just so much fun, and it was just like, woohoo, here we are, we're in the big time, even though of course it was Fleetwood Mac crowd.
Yeah.
But it didn't really make our music any harder to write, perform, record, play. It was just a really happy and exciting byproduct to be in a band that had a lot of radio play and could go play stadium shows. So believe me, my career has been 35 years long, and there was only a few summers there where we were actually playing the huge venues. So I look up at that time fondly, because I'm really fortunate to have been in a band that got a chance to experience that.
Was it difficult, though, in those stadium shows to win over a crowd that had primarily come to see the main attraction?
It's so big, and most of them are so far away from you that sometimes you can't tell anyway.
Yeah.
You can't really tell if they're liking you or hating you. Of course, if they hated you, they may throw things at you, and if they love you, they'll cheer wildly. And we got really good response, and I think probably the reason that we got such good response on those stadium shows is we had some hit records to play, and people recognized the songs and sang along and clapped wildly afterwards. Certainly there was no question that we were the opening band and just lucky to be on the bill, and these people were there to see Fleetwood Mac or Bob Seger or the Doobie Brothers, but we were holding our own and had a number of radio hits that people recognized. So I think that's why we went over so well.
The band suffer from an identity problem at any stage, because your well-known and commercially successful material was more ballad-orientated. Do you think the general music public missed out on hearing the more diverse nature of the band?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's something I've dealt with being, in Firefall for the last 30 years. In 2006, we celebrated our 30th anniversary. And when You Are the Woman came out and was the huge runaway smash hit off that first record, our record company, Atlantic Records, really wanted the band to be You Are the Woman. They would have preferred to have 10 songs like You Are the Woman, and that's all they wanted was the ballad, syrupy kind of love song that You Are the Woman, which is a great song, and I'm really happy to have that in our repertoire, but it's not a very wide-ranging look at what Firefall really is. Yeah. We were pretty much a rock band, a charging rock band that had 3 or 4 love song ballads per record, but our record company really wanted us to be that ballads band. And consequently, what ended up happening was a lot of people would come to our concerts and expect to hear You Are the Woman and Just Remember I Love You and not much else. And then when we'd get up there and really just kick it out and really rock out, everybody really liked it, but we heard all the time, boy, I didn't expect you guys to rock that much. So it really kind of was hard, and it's easy to get pigeonholed into a kind of music that one song might, lead you in.
Yeah. At what point in what album do you think the band matured into the band that you wanted it to be?
Probably our third album, Elan, that had Strange Way and a lot of other songs, and then the later albums, the fourth and the fifth album, with still all the lineup of the original band, maybe weren't as good a records throughout as that third album. And I really think we hit our stride, and we also realized our potential, and were able to try to fill the shoes that we set for ourselves, if so to speak. It was tough though, because the band went where our songs took us, and if there was a ballad, we'd go be that ballad band. If it was a hard charging song like Get Back on that record, it was like really powerful and just quite energetic, and didn't get much radio play nor push from the record label. So we kind of had this black and white thing going, because Atlantic Records didn't really want us to be a rock band. They wanted us to be a ballads band. And here, particularly myself, I was thinking, man, let's rock out more. And it was a little disheartening at times, but hey, you can't complain when you're touring, with someone like Fleetwood Mac, or you're getting gold or platinum records. It's like, well, hey, can't be too upset with things. Look.
Reading over the history of the band, it seems you were at times plagued by management and management problems and personal squabbles, a lot of which can happen.
That's putting it nicely. Thank you so much.
Happens to lots of bands. In hindsight, though, is there anything you could have done to avoid all of that?
Well, yeah. We could have been a lot smarter. We were all kind of, excited, somewhat dumb musicians. And we signed a record deal that was not a great record deal. It was great in a lot of respects, but we got screwed on royalties and a lot of business. But 80% of bands back then did get screwed by record companies, and that's the first thing. And the second thing is we never really had a single manager long enough to have a 3 or 5 year vision or plan for the band that would have, back in our heyday, included conquering Europe and going to Australia and, a bigger, longer range plan. And, and we chose the wrong manager one time, and then one time we chose the right manager and he lost interest and quit. And it's just kind of a sad story of us not picking the right manager at the right time. And a lot of the business aspects of Firefall, really kind of held us back and helped to sow the seeds of our own destruction.
Was it difficult in the 80s when I guess the general musical landscape was starting to change to maintain a profile for the band?
Absolutely, and you put it real well. To me, when after the original Firefall band broke up and the dust settled and I realized that I was the only guy who didn't quit, and kind of by default I ended up owning the name, because if you left the band, if you quit the band, you gave up title to the name. And I kind of thought, well, what do I do? I mean, do I let it die gracefully and be content with what it was, or do I want to keep it going? And it really felt to me like the music was still viable. The songs that Firefall played, most of which I didn't write, the songs were really strong and people loved them, and we'd sold 4 or 5 million records and etc. I just figured, man, let's keep it going. And I reformed the band in the 80s and tried to go make headway again. And what happened was exactly what you said. The musical landscape that we were, playing on dramatically changed underneath us. Suddenly, 3-part harmonies were not done. About the only place that they were doing big harmonies was in country music. And, the punk movement came up to, kind of in America at least, to, flip the finger to that disco plastic music that was so successful, and punk music and the Sex Pistols and all of that. It was like anti-establishment rock and everything. A band like Firefall was easily lost in that mix. To me, the 80s was kind of a lost generation of music. Now, there were some great bands, The Police and John Cougar Mellencamp and Peter Gabriel and Genesis. There's a lot of really good groups, but by and large, there was a lot of bad music put out and sold in the 80s. And me being in Firefall, I just kind of thought, well, let's keep it going. We still tour a lot and have a lot of fans, and I'm making a living, and it's okay. And for about 10 years, it was a little tough out there. And then all of a sudden, in the 90s, came classic rock. Woohoo! And then suddenly everybody was going, oh, I love the Beatles. I love the Eagles. I love Firefall. And there was a whole resurgence of music from 10 or 20 years earlier that was melodic, well-written songs, lyrics that meant something to people, as opposed to this kind of plastic, whatever it was, I don't know.
Moving on to the 90s, I guess a moment in time you'll never forget was there was a great flood in 1993.
Yeah.
That resulted in one of your great songs. Tell us about that.
Well, thank you for calling that a great song. The song When the River Rises, Firefall was touring in the great American Midwest right when the the flood was happening in the late summer of 1993. And a few of our gigs had been canceled. Outdoor gigs had been canceled. A few that were supposed to be on the banks of the Mississippi River had to be moved back 5 miles. And driving around the area at that time was unbelievable. And the TV footage that you saw on, on the television and CNN really didn't do it justice, because being there and seeing, families and homes and cities wiped out and people losing everything, and just the huge scope of the tragedy was like, wow. And basically the day that I came home from that tour, the song When the River Rises basically woke me up at 4 a.m. And I woke up and I went, When the River Rises. And I went into my music room, and about 15 minutes later, the song was done. And I thought, wow, that's great. And I played it for a couple of the band guys the next day, and they said, man, we should record this. And the timing of it was pretty amazing. I wrote the song. 3 days after I wrote it, Firefall recorded it, and 2 or 3 days after we recorded it, I took it back to St. Louis, and it was on the radio for the first time 5 days after it had been written. And I was given a portion of the publishing away to flood relief, and hoping to, in a small way, help out a little bit. And that's how that song came about.
I believe just a few years ago you received a belated platinum album in an unusual way. Tell us about that.
Back in the old days, back in 1976, our first album came out and went gold quicker than any other album had gone on Atlantic Records, which was amazing to us because, heck, the Rolling Stones and Aretha Franklin and Led Zeppelin were on Atlantic Records, and here Firefall had, the quickest gold record from the release date. The second album went gold fast, too. When the third album came out, and we got a quick platinum album, we kept being told that the first album had gone platinum and had gone over 1 million copies. And when our manager would contact Atlantic Records, they'd say, no, it hasn't. But what ended up happening was we were in renegotiation for our record deal to try to correct some of the mistakes that we had signed, a couple of years earlier with the original 7-album deal. And Atlantic Records would not acknowledge the fact that that album had gone, in fact, over 1 million sales. And they said, no. So we went, okay. And we just kind of let it go, although we knew, that it had to have gone platinum back in about 1977 or 78. Well, fast forward 20-some years, and a person who worked for Firefall for a couple of years out on the road and had gold and platinum record, from the old days, someone had broken into his house and stolen his gold records, and he approached me about buying some new ones. So when I contacted Atlantic Records, because you have to get permission and check with RIAA, I asked them the simple question, I think this album went platinum a long time ago. Could you check and see what the sales figures are? Sure enough, it took the gal 5 seconds to go, oh yeah, you're at 1.9 million. I'll certify it platinum today. So, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, we got a brand new platinum record that actually went platinum back in 1977, but for political reasons, Atlantic Records would not certify it, because a band that had 2 platinum records had more, negotiation clout than one that only had 1. So it was really a pretty funny story, but heck, when we got the new platinum record, we threw a big party and invited some people to come, and it was really a kick.
Well, better late than never, hey?
I guess so.
Now, before we go on to talk about your new record, tell us the status of Firefall today.
Firefall today, we tour a lot. Our manager in Nashville also manages Poco and Pure Prairie League, who are classic rock bands from that time frame also. So we travel around the United States, occasionally go to Europe, occasionally go to Australia. To Japan. I'm thinking ahead of myself. Firefall has never come to Australia, and we'd love to, but it just hasn't worked out yet. Hopefully, hopefully sometime soon we will, because the band's really rocking. One thing that's interesting is that Steve Weinmeister, who's the lead vocalist in Firefall, and myself, a few years ago, we were asked to play on a radio station here in Denver, Colorado, come down and play 3 or 4 Beatles songs, just the two of us acoustically, and we did so, and they went over so well, we were asked to come back and sing a couple of more, and everybody kept saying, well, when are you making a CD? And, now a Beatles cover CD is like, warning, because so many bad cover songs of Beatles songs have come out, and the Beatles, are the best band ever. But we really talked about it and thought about it and said, we should do this, and it's a tribute. So Stephen and I are about 95% finished recording. The name of the CD is going to be Colorado to Liverpool, Firefall Acoustic, because it's not the full band, Firefall Acoustic, a tribute to the Beatles. And I'm really excited to say we're almost done with that, and it should be out in June or July, and it really is sounding great. And a lot of the radio stations that are playing my Blindside CD, for instance, in Europe, are saying, God, send us that when it's done. So we're getting some advance attention on that, and I'm really happy to say that it's turning out great.
Sounds fantastic. What are some of the tracks you've got on there?
We've done Norwegian Wood, I Need You, Eleanor Rigby, Don't Want to Spoil the Party, I guess Spoil the Party. I'm working on Within You, Without You as we speak today and tomorrow in the studio, finishing that. It's just some of our favorite Beatles songs from, generally speaking, the Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's era.
Some interesting choices there too, not some of the most commonly covered ones.
Right. Well, and everybody's heard all the hits, and Steve has, and we're both total Beatle fanatics. We're just nuts. And I must say, kind of plugging my own career here a little bit, I'm also an artist, and I have the extreme fortune to have had 4 of my Beatles paintings appear in a new Beatles art book called Beatles Art, fantastic new artwork of the Fab Four. And the publishers amazingly asked me to write the foreword for this a couple of years ago, and it was just like, oh my gosh, what a great honor, and also a daunting and scary thought. What can you say about the Beatles that hasn't been said already? But so with that Beatles book out, and it just seemed, this feels really good. So we just picked some of our favorite songs, some of which aren't the big Beatle hits.
Now, let's talk about Blindside. It must be a wonderful feeling to after all these years, to finally have some solo material out there.
Yeah, well, it does. And, I figured at some point in the last couple of years, I figured I'm getting older, and if I don't do something soon, I probably will never make a solo CD. And my position is I'm really a band guy. I function the best as a lead guitar player in a rockin' band, and I kind of have never seen myself as a front person or the main guy. And, and it just really felt like it was time to take a lot of these really strong songs I thought that I'd been writing the last few years and do something with them. And I think the key to that was I met a fella who was interested in becoming an investor in my project. And suddenly when you had money behind you, it's like, how many doors open? It's like, oh, hey, we got money for studio time and to pay musicians and to do everything right? All right. So to have money behind you to be able to go into the studio and to pay all these wonderful players that are on my CD, what they're worth, really made all the difference in the world. And I was fortunate. Here in Colorado, which is, even though it's not like, as Seattle was, during Nirvana and Pearl Jam, or Austin, Texas is amazing musical town, but Colorado is a hotbed for music because so many famous musicians move here to get away from the rat race. And on my Blindside CD, we've got Richie Furay from the Buffalo Springfield and Poco, and Rusty Young from Poco, and 2 members of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and John Magny from the Subdudes, and members of Big Head Todd and the Monsters, and String Cheese Incident, and a lot of kind of name Colorado rock and roll players. And they were all very gracious when I asked them if they'd play on a song or 2 or 3 of my first ever solo CD, and I'm just jazzed with how great it all turned out.
It is a very impressive list of players on the album. Did you have specific people in mind for specific roles, or did it all just pan out in the studio?
In a few cases, I definitely did have a few very specific ideas about, boy, I hear accordion on this song, and John Magny from the Subdudes is the man on that. There were other tunes where I asked, like John McEwen from the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, who is the master of just about every stringed instrument there is, including fiddle and banjo and mandolin and guitar and all these great instruments, and and I didn't know which song to really send him, and in fact he wasn't at that time in Colorado, and he said, well, email me out the song and I'll put a part on and I'll email it back to you. So some of the tunes we did without even them coming into the studio, and I kind of trusted them to come up with something good, and sure enough, what they sent me back was like, wow, this is great. So it was really an amazing moment when we'd plug in their part to this song and go, oh, this is great. Kind of that long distance high technology stuff.
So you've never felt the urge in the past to record a solo record, or it's just been a time factor?
Well, I did, but the truth of the matter is, John, is that I view myself as a really, really good lead guitar player. And I think I've, in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years, turned into a really good songwriter. But the other key element to that, when you're going to make your own solo record, is that you have to be a killer lead vocalist and a singer. And, and I've always been a little insecure and paranoid about my singing, and though I can sing a good song and I'm a good singer, if you're going to put out a solo record of your own and sing on, 11 or 12 or 13 songs, you better be damn good. Mm-hmm. And, and that was kind of the thing that probably held me back a little bit. One thing that really helped out is, I've met and become really good friends with a fellow named Bob Harris, who used to play with Warren Zevon and even Frank Zappa. And he is a phenomenal vocalist. I mean, in our live band, he does a couple of Paul Rogers songs, some Bad Company songs that sound just like Paul Rogers. I mean, he's fantastic. And he's now in my band, and he was, not only did he sing a lot of the background vocals on Blindside, he sang 3 of the lead vocals, and I thought, well, this is great, because occasionally, every 3rd or 4th song, we'll have a new guy come in and charge it up vocally. So I didn't feel so bad about it all being me.
Now, there's one song on the album which I guess wasn't specifically written for the record, but it goes back a few years, a song called Call on Me. And it's a song of great importance to you, I believe.
Well, it is, and I'll try to be short with this, but I was asked to write a song in 1998 for a local chapter of suicide prevention that was about to go out of business. And what ended up happening in the mid to the late 90s was a lot of U.S. government help to social services pretty much got cut off, and suicide prevention hotlines, crisis lines across the country, suddenly, 70% of their budget was cut or something like that. And a lot of these places that were so necessary to help in the welfare of particularly troubled teens, it was just slashed and cut off, and so many of them around the country were, suddenly struggling and were going to go out of business. And after I'd written this song and it appeared on a local's album that made a little money that helped that particular crisis hotline stay in business for another year, when that was done, I kind of thought, man, this is a good song. It has a really good chorus. It's a very positive lyric, and it really kind of hits the nail on the head. That was one of those songs that kind of came through me real fast, and the lyrics just really felt right. They almost felt like someone else was writing them. They just kind of boom came out of their mouth, and there they were. And I said I could do more with this, and we could try to make this a national thing. And I put on a few suicide prevention benefits on my own in Nashville with friends of mine down in Nashville, including Michael McDonald and Winona Judd and Rusty Young of Poco and some other people down there. And suddenly the Washington, D.C. bureaucratic suicide prevention conglomerate, this big thing, kind of got in touch with me and said, "We love your song. We want you to be part of the team. Let's go." And here I am, an old hippie Colorado guitar player, kind of sitting in this big boat with all these high-powered Washington, D.C. bureaucrats trying to, all of us, contend with this very serious problem of suicide and the epidemic that suicide is here in the United States, particularly in the ages between 15 and 25, which is, in that age group, is the second leading cause of death in the United States, and it's just tragic. And you throw in Columbine High School, and you throw in the gun violence and all this stuff, and it's like, man, so for me, this was a very healing and hopefully positive way for me as an artist to maybe turn it around and give something back, and and send out a hopeful message there, because people who are battling with such serious depression that it could lead to suicide, they need somebody to talk to, or they need some help. And it was an honor for me to be involved with the starting up of the first ever national crisis hotline, 1-800-SUICIDE, and we raised a little money, threw on another benefit or two, one with Journey, and it's been really fulfilling, and I'm more than happy to do it.
Fantastic. Yeah, the power of song, hey?
Yeah, it is.
Apart from that song, were all the others written with the solo project in mind?
About half of them were. I went on a songwriting binge in the winter of 2005 and 2006, knowing that I had a financial investor and I'm going to be able to start a record. So I cranked out about 12 or 15 songs and thought, boy, some of these are really good. And I really thought that I was going to write all new songs. And then I realized, it kind of hit me like being slapped in the face, is, wait a minute, you wrote some really great songs 10 years ago or 8 years ago, and you need to go back and look at your catalog of some of these songs that I kind of forgot that I even had, including Veronica So Fair, which some people are calling the best song on the record, real lovely, bittersweet, ballad. So it's a mixture of brand new songs and 4 or 5 songs from the past 10 years that, rose to the top of the barrel.
Have you found yourself writing differently, writing for yourself than what you would say for writing material for the band? Writing in a different way or a different type of song?
Well, that's the great thing about writing songs in general, as it is with painting. Now, my problem as a painter is I paint way too wide of a category of painting, so that one painting might not even look like the same artist as the next one. With songs, I go to Nashville a lot, and I go write country songs. My son is in a heavy metal band back here in Denver, and I've written a couple of songs in that genre with that band. And a couple of years ago, I wrote songs for a poppy, teenage girl band that was trying to get going. So writing songs is, you kind of just put on a hat and go, hey, I can do that. It's not it's not that hard to on one level write a country song and then turn around and write some blues song or a heavy metal song. It's all music, and it's all chord changes and melodies. And one of the things that I think is overlooked a lot, these days, is good lyric, not only minds but their hearts. So, yeah, I write all kinds of songs, and I'm hoping to have a couple of country bands or heavy metal bands, actually record some of mine. But that's not the goal. The goal is not to make money, and the goal is not to be, have your songs necessarily covered by big bands and make you a lot of money, although that's great when you can do it. But really, the songs and the creation is what's pure and what really feels the best.
Now, you've had a good response from Europe for this record. Has that always been a good market for you?
No, it hasn't been a good market at all, which was surprising to me because, like we talked about earlier, Firefall never went and toured Europe when we probably should have and could have back in the late 70s. And now in Europe, people go, Firefall? Nah, they don't know who we are. And, for instance, some of the huge hits in the United States, You Are the Woman or Just Remember I Love You or Strange Way, weren't hits over in Europe at all. We definitely have pockets of fans, and because of the whole classic rock, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Eagles, Poco, we have, fans over in Europe, but we never toured there and never really got big over there. So it kind of surprised me when my marketing team for Blindside did the World Wide Web campaign and sent it out to everybody, in all countries, and here it is. Do you like it? Would you like us to send you a promo pack? Blah, blah, blah. We got amazing response from Europe, and I've sent probably between 80 and 90 promo packs and CDs to 18 or 20 countries in Europe, and am getting a lot of airplay over there.
It's fantastic.
So it's really fulfilling. It's a total surprise to me.
What impressed me, there was a real melting pot of musical styles on the album. Did you plan that right from the start, or again, is that just the way the songs generated themselves in the studio?
It's just how it happened. Now, certainly, I knew that I had Veronica So Fair, so I wanted to put another ballad, but I didn't want to have 5 ballads. I only wanted to have maybe 2 or possibly 3. And I knew that at one point, I need to have one really fast up-tempo song. So as the album progressed, and you look at it and you've got maybe 6 or 7 of the songs done, you look at it and go, ooh, I need one that goes like this, or ooh, I need the slide, whatever it might be. And then you might write a song for that slot. But I didn't really have a plan for the record. It's been pointed out to me that most of the lyrics on this record are of a negative or mournful or pissed off quality. There's not a lot of happy songs on my record. And I went, wow, that's funny, because there was a couple of happy songs, except they got dropped in the final, when the final program came out. So I'm going, well, hey, listen to Call on Me. That's happy. That's positive.
Yeah.
But, and I didn't really plan it that way, although, to me, sometimes songs of a negative or from a position of hurt or I don't know, that kind of stuff. A lot of those lyrics are more hard-hitting than the really happy, oh, life's so great, I've got a wonderful woman kind of song. And I love, hey, there's great songs of all kind of ilk, but I didn't plan it that, 9 out of, 11 or 10 out of 13 or something songs would be more kind of a little darker in nature lyrically, but I'm just really proud of how the record as a whole turned out. It turned out better because of all of the players that were on it, and also the engineers and the producers who were really thinking young. A lot of the rhythm section and one of the other guitar players I used on the record, they're all in their early 30s. And, and they add a really modern quality to the record that had I tried to play most of the instruments or, produce everything by myself and not take any suggestions, I don't think Blindside would have been quite the album it is now.
Just harking back to your artwork, there's one of your works on the cover art here for the album. How important has it been for you to have that second creative outlet?
I wouldn't really say that it's that important. And in fact, for about 20 years, it was pretty latent and non-existent. I've been an artist for actually longer than I've played guitar, and I've played guitar for, almost 50 years, 40, 45 or 50 years. But I've always been an artist, and it's a great outlet. It's different than music because now recorded music is different because when you record it, then it's there for all time, and 30 years later you can listen back to that original spark or that great guitar solo or that wonderful vocal from a long time ago. So I mean, it's timeless in that sense. But music is so immediate. Like when you're playing a gig live and I've got my eyes closed and I'm just soloing and blowing as a lead guitar player, that solo comes out, might be the best solo I ever played, and then it's gone. And only those people that were there heard it, or maybe you were even just practicing and nobody was there and nobody heard it. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's just there and gone. On the other side of that, artwork is this slower creation, and for me, and one of my challenges as an artist is I kind of need to loosen up and get quicker with my stuff. But, when you're, in front of a canvas and you're painting, and you do this, and it may take a week or 2 weeks to create this thing. And it's really great to have two dramatically different styles of creation be able to come through me. And I'm blessed, and, and it's just really fun to be able to do. I'm glad you mentioned the CD cover. I hadn't really even thought of putting a piece of art of mine on the cover until the guy who was taking the photography said, well, you've got 3 or 4 pieces of art that could fit with the Blindside, the title. Why don't you use one of these? And he actually even went on my website and pointed to 2 or 3 different pictures, and I went, that's a pretty good idea. And then I decided to go with one of my series of sensual women, and I thought, wow, that's a good idea. But it wasn't like a big ego trip of, hey, look, I do everything. It was actually an afterthought to put a piece of my artwork on the cover.
And what are the plans? Are you taking this album on the road?
Yep. We're having 3 gigs here in Colorado this and next week, and we'll be touring selected cities. We're talking to a real nice place in Austin, Texas, and Orlando and Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So we're going to go do some selected cities and try to make a bigger impact in the United States, which, by the way, is ridiculously impossible, with the corporate radio in the United States and, 1 or 2 corporations owning 3,000 or 4,000 radio stations. And, it's so difficult. And I'm not getting much attention in the United States from radio, although there's a lot of pockets that are playing, individual songs or whatever. And it's interesting for me that here I'm getting airplay in Europe and in Australia, and I'm going, all right, that's fine with me. I'm glad somebody's, listening.
We certainly are. Congratulations on it too. It's a fantastic piece of work, and it's great to hear you still bursting with enthusiasm after all these years.
Well, I am, and and the thing is I never grew up, and I think artists and musicians in general, or writers or actors who get to portray other people or whatever. A lot of us really creative people really never grew up, and you put me in a room full of 4 or 6 year olds, and I'm there. I get along way better with children than I do adults. And, writing songs is very childlike. And once you get past the fear factor of, oh, what'll someone think, or, oh, I can't do this or whatever, and you just let that natural childlike creativity come through, man, you don't know where it's going to take you, and a lot of times it just takes you in really wonderful places. And I'm happy to say that Blindside is kind of a creation of that. It was a unexpected direction, and boy, I'm really pleased with it, and I'm glad that it's going over so well in so many places.
Fantastic. Jock, thanks so much for your time. It's been a treat to catch up with us today.
John, I thank you for the opportunity. Firefall used to travel a lot with the Little River Band, and I have a couple of good buddies that are Aussies, and like I said earlier, I hope at some point Firefall or myself can come down there and play with, you guys are fantastic, and thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
We hope we get to see you down here. Just like that platinum record, it could be a case of better late than never, hey?
Exactly.
Thanks again, Jock.
Thanks, folks.
Take care. Bye-bye.